Welcome back. This is week 10, part 3. We're discussing what content area teachers should know about literacy and how to work with your adolescent reader. So, in doing so, I want to introduce you to the LRD method, which comes from Manzo and Manzo, who are from our Cal State Fullerton Reading Department, and it stands for Listen, Read, Discuss. Typically, in instruction, students first read, then listen to lecture, instruction, and then discuss. But with the LRD, you're inverting the first two steps so that students have a preview of the content and then they're empowered to read the material. So I'm going to do a little LRD with you about this article, which is a resource that summarizes and discusses all of the most recent adolescent literacy research and also describes those research-based instructional practices, because if you are going to have a successful RTI program, you need research-based interventions. So this article is chock full of those. It is broken into two parts. The first part deals with our 5 key components of reading as established by the National Reading Panel. And then the second part is talking about assessment, writing, and motivation. So let's take a look at the first part, which starts with decoding. So by now you should hopefully know that decoding is synonymous with word identification or the ability to decipher a particular word. The subskills involved are phonics and phonemic awareness. Good readers can use knowledge of letters and sounds to produce the unknown words. Only 10% of adolescent students actually struggle with decoding. So pay attention to the number of adolescent students that you're trying to teach decoding to, because that might not necessarily be what they need. You want to model phonemic awareness skills when introducing new vocabulary to them. Provide instruction in phonics, especially those multisyllabic and high-frequency words. So typically the older students do need help with those multisyllabic words, always providing direct, explicit, and systematic instruction. Morphology would be the study of word structure. So like a phoneme is the smallest unit of sound, a morpheme is the smallest unit of meaning in a word. So oftentimes that S ending sound provides some meaning to the word. Good readers can use knowledge of morphological structure to recognize complex words. Morphology impacts both vocabulary and comprehension. You want to teach the morpheme's role in changing the meaning of the word, teaching syllable types, base words, prefixes, suffixes, compound words, and function words. And you can always do some quick speed drills with morphology to help with that. I often did a prefix suffix minute in 2nd grade where I had a list of common prefixes and they had to quickly write the definition of it. You could also do fluency speed drills where they're having to read different morphemes quickly. Fluency is the ability to read text accurately and smoothly with little conscious attention to mechanics. Good readers are recognizing them automatically, so they're not spending excessive cognitive energy decoding, and they can actually comprehend beyond the word level. Practice is essential for fluency building. You want to be modeling fluent reading as an example on a regular basis. You want to use repeated oral readings, guided oral reading, partner reading as well. Moving on to vocabulary. This is words used in speech and print to communicate. So producing the words orally and then absorbing them orally when you hear them. It requires word identification, word analysis, and syntactic awareness. Good readers are able to recognize more words, verbalize them, and learn their word meanings. This requires, vocabulary instruction requires repeated exposures. You also want to pre-teach vocabulary, using direct instruction, using prior knowledge, and provide many opportunities for application across many settings. Text comprehension is the process of extracting or constructing meaning, also the goal of reading. Good readers are purposeful, strategic, and critical. They need to integrate text comprehension strategies into instruction. Not them, you need to integrate text comprehension strategies into instruction. You need to model the process of comprehension monitoring, like we saw with Ginger. She needs help doing that. You need to teach summarizing, teach text structure, especially with expository text. So many times when I ask students the main idea, they say lions. Okay, but what specifically about lions? What is the text structure here? Are we comparing and contrasting two different lion types? Is it chronological order? Are we tracing the lion from birth to death? What is the text structure, which is going to then tell us what the main idea of this is? You want to develop critical analysis and reasoning skills using a gradual release. Teach them how to use multiple strategies at the same time, because that is often what we do as a good reader. So the second part of this article talks about assessment, writing, and motivation. So with assessments, you should know about summative assessments being a concluding assessment, say a final exam in a course where data would not be used to form instruction. Formative assessment is going to inform your instruction. You can use teacher questioning, teacher observation, performance-based assessments, and then we have those diagnostic assessments like you have gotten very familiar with. You want to make sure you have multiple sources of data that you are using always. As far as writing is concerned, when you look at skilled writers, they have learned to be self-directed and goal-oriented. Writing is important because without it, students lack an effective communication and learning tool. Think about your performance in college in this grad course. How much writing do you do for note-taking, for communicating? All of your assignments are written. So we need to provide direct instruction for writing using a gradual release, starting at the pre-writing stage. So many times students' written work is a direct reflection of their lack of pre-writing. So they do really poorly with ideas and organization because they didn't do any sort of pre-writing. You want to provide a supportive instructional environment, use rubrics to assess and make them aware of the rubrics you're using. Next, motivation. This would be an individual's goals, values, and beliefs regarding reading. It also includes self-efficacy. We've talked a lot about motivation previously. Motivated readers are determined, they're self-regulated, and they are engaged. There is a noticeable decline in motivation for adolescents, especially in your struggling reader population. A lot of times this is a result of the self-fulfilling prophecy. So when students are told you're not a good reader or you can't do this, or are when teachers are interrupting them a lot to correct them in reading, which is something you should never do frequently because that definitely impacts their fluency and comprehension and their dependency on you. But when they are held to low expectations are reinforced, they're going to fulfill those expectations. Self-fulfilling prophecy. Also grading, if I'm constantly being given poor grades and being given negative feedback about my performance, that's going to hurt my motivation. I'm not going to feel successful. I'm not going to be motivated to try, as well as tracking. If I know I'm in the low reading group or the low rotation period class, like that's also going to hurt my motivation. So in order to combat that, we want to help students to set and monitor clear goals. So we want to give them incremental goals that they feel successful with and help them meet those goals. We want to provide students more variety and choice, empower them, give them autonomy. We want to help students to interact through reading, giving them things that interest them to read. All right, so our two big objectives today, we're talking about grouping strategies and rationales for those. How can we differentiate based on data? And then looking at the needs of adolescent readers and how to help them, since that's who you're working with now. To launch you, I have a TED Talk, which is actually about math instruction, but I love it anyway. If you aren't familiar with the TED Talks, I recommend you check those out. But this one is It's from Dan Meyer, who is an excellent math teacher, and he's developed this 3 acts of reading, not reading, of math, three acts of math, where he has real life applications for math problems, and it's very Common Core, and I love it. But he is talking about in the introduction of his TED Talk his role as a teacher, and I want you to think about how it connects to motivation and what you're trying to do as a reading teacher.
Can I ask you to please recall a time when you really loved something, a movie, an album, a song, or a book, and you recommended it wholeheartedly to someone you also really liked? And you anticipated that reaction, you waited for it, and it came back, and the person hated it. So, by way of introduction, that is the exact same state in which I spend every working day of the last 6 years. I teach high school math. I sell a product to a market that doesn't want it, but is forced by law to buy it. I mean, it's just a losing proposition. So there's a useful stereotype about students that I see, a useful stereotype about you all. I could give you guys Algebra 2 final exam, and I'd expect no higher than a 25% pass rate. And both of these.
So I'm actually going to stop it there, but I thought this was a clever introduction to his talk in that you are selling a product, reading instruction, that you want your readers to buy. You want them to be motivated and invested in, and I think this is very important as you start your work with adolescent readers who may have been reinforced to have low self-concept, low self-esteem when it comes to reading. So make sure that you're really getting to know them, getting to know their interests, and that their interests and needs are number one, and you're communicating that to them. So have a great first week with your new student, and I look forward to seeing how it goes through your artifacts.
These facts say less about you or